Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as Podcasts, where we like to dig into the surprising depths of the everyday.
That's right.
And today, we're embarking on a journey into a world you probably never thought twice about.
Oh, yeah.
The surprisingly fascinating world of shoelaces.
Shoelaces. Yeah.
Yes, you heard that right, shoelaces.
It's easy to dismiss them as just a simple necessity, but trust me, there's a lot more to these humble fasteners than meets the eye.
I'm all ears, honestly. I never thought shoelaces could be a topic of conversation, let alone a captivating one.
Oh, they're very captivating.
So where do we even begin?
Well, let's start by acknowledging that tying our shoes is something most of us do without a second thought. But the way we secure our footwear has evolved over millennia. And even the terms we use, shoelaces in the US, bootlaces in the UK, hint at that historical depth.
So are we talking about ancient sandals with elaborate straps?
Not quite, but we're definitely going way back. Archaeological evidence suggests that lacing systems were used as far back as 3500 BC. The Iranian one shoe discovered in Armenia dates back to that period.
Really?
It's a simple leather shoe with leather laces, a testament to the enduring ingenuity of early humans.
That's incredible. We're talking about a shoe that's over 5,000 years old.
Exactly. And then we have Ötzi the Iceman, who lived around 3300 BC.
Oh, right.
His remarkably well-preserved footwear used laces crafted from lime bark string.
Wow.
It really highlights how humans have been using laces to secure their footwear for millennia.
It's amazing to think about the evolution of something as seemingly simple as a shoelace, but I have to ask, were shoelaces always embraced throughout history?
You might be surprised to learn that shoelaces weren't always seen in a positive light.
Hmm.
In fact, the Knights Templar, a powerful medieval military order, actually banned the wearing of shoelaces.
What?
They considered them a vanity, abominable, and pagan.
Seriously, a shoelace ban? That seems a bit extreme even for a group of knights.
It might seem odd to us now,
Yeah.
but it speaks to the fact that even back then, clothing and accessories carried social and cultural significance.
That makes sense. Speaking of which, what kind of materials did they use for those early laces? I imagine leather was a popular choice.
Leather was certainly common, as were natural fibers like cotton, jute, and hemp materials readily available and suitable for rope making.
Uh-huh.
These traditional materials offered durability and a classic look.
And I'm guessing modern shoelaces have moved on to different materials.
Absolutely. Today, synthetic fibers like nylon and polyester are widely used.
Okay.
They tend to be more durable, wear down less quickly, and offer a smoother look. However, they can be a bit slippery, which can affect knot security. It's interesting to consider how each material impacts functionality and even aesthetics.
It's fascinating how there's a whole science behind something as simple as a shoelace. You mentioned slipperiness, and that brings us to the all-important topic of knots. Is there a right way and a wrong way to tie a shoelace?
There absolutely is.
I knew it.
The common bow knot, the one most of us use, relies on friction to stay secure. It's essentially two half knots tied on top of each other, but the order in which you tie those half knots matters a lot.
So what's the correct way to tie a secure bow knot?
You want to create what's called a square knot or a reef knot.
Okay.
It involves a specific sequence, right over left, then left over right. If you reverse that order on either half knot, you end up with a granny knot, which is notoriously unreliable and prone to coming undone.
Ah, the dreaded granny knot. I think we've all been victims of that one at some point. Is there an easy way to tell if you've tied a square knot or granny knot?
There's a simple visual cue after tying your bow look at the orientation of the loops.
Oh, okay.
If they lie perpendicular to the shoe, forming a sort of cross shape, you've got a square knot.
Uh-huh.
If they lie parallel to the shoe along the length of the laces, it's likely a granny knot.
That's a really helpful tip.
Yeah.
I'm going to be checking my knots from now on.
Good.
But even a square knot can come undone sometimes, especially during vigorous activities.
Oh,
Are there any other knots that are known for their security?
absolutely. For those seeking extra security, there's a world of alternative knots out there. The turquoise turtle, the shoemaker's knot, the better bow, the surgeon's knot. These all use variations in technique to enhance grip and prevent slippage.
It's incredible how much thought and ingenuity has gone into the art of tying shoelaces.
It is.
And speaking of incredible, before we delve deeper into the world of secure knots, let me just remind everyone to hit that subscribe button.
Yes.
You don't want to miss out on any more fascinating stories and deep dives here on Tell Me More.
We have some great stories coming up.
But where were we?
Ah, yes.
Those super secure knots. What makes them so different from the standard bow knot?
Many of these alternative knots incorporate the concept of a double wrap, where the lace is looped around twice instead of once.
Oh.
This increases friction and makes the knot significantly more resistant to loosening.
So it's like a double dose of security without sacrificing ease of untying.
Exactly. They might take a little more practice to master, but once you get the hang of them, they offer peace of mind and can even prevent those embarrassing tripped over your own shoelace moments.
That's definitely something I could use. But before we all go out and start practicing our knot tying skills, I'm curious about something else when it comes to shoelaces. Is length just a matter of personal preference, or is there more to it?
Length is actually quite important and ties directly into both functionality and aesthetics.
Okay.
You need to consider the lacing method you're using and the type of lace. For example, a shoe with 6 pairs of eyelets will require a longer lace if you're using a criss-cross lacing method compared to a straight bar lacing method.
That makes sense. I can imagine trying to tie a shoe with a lace that's too short would be quite frustrating. But who knew there was so much to consider when it came to shoelace length?
It's one of those details that often goes unnoticed, but it plays a crucial role in ensuring a comfortable and secure fit.
Right.
And speaking of lacing, are we just talking about the standard crisscross method, or are there other ways to lace a shoe?
I was just about to ask that. I know there's the straight bar lacing I sometimes see on dressier shoes, but are there any other techniques?
Oh, prepare to be amazed. The world of shoelace lacing is far more diverse than you might imagine, in fact. For a shoe with 6 pairs of eyelets, there are almost 2 trillion possible lacing combinations.
2 trillion. You're kidding, right? That's mind-boggling.
It's true, of course, not all of those combinations are practical or aesthetically pleasing, but it highlights the surprising complexity of something we often take for granted.
So out of those trillions of possibilities, which lacing methods are the most common? I imagine the crisscross style is up there.
You're absolutely right. Crisscross lacing with its familiar over-under pattern is by far the most popular. It's strong, efficient, and provides a secure fit, making it ideal for casual shoes like sneakers and boots.
And what about that straight bar lacing I mentioned? What's the story behind that style?
Straight bar lacing, as the name suggests, involves running the laces straight across the shoe, creating a parallel pattern. It's often favored for formal shoes, like Oxfords, because it creates a clean, sleek, and sophisticated look.
So it's not just about function, it's also about fashion.
Exactly. Lacing methods can convey different aesthetics, and the choice often depends on the type of shoe and the desired look. Crisscross for a casual and sporty vibe, straight bar for a more formal and refined aesthetic.
I'm starting to see the hidden depths of shoelace lacing. It's more than just a practical necessity. It's a way to personalize your footwear and express a certain style.
And it doesn't stop there. There are other lacing methods, some designed for specific functional benefits and others purely for decorative purposes. For example, have you ever heard of checkerboard lacing?
Checkerboard lacing, that sounds intriguing.
It involves a more intricate pattern where the laces create a checkerboard effect. It's visually striking, but not very practical for tightening or loosening.
So it's more about making a visual statement than providing a secure fit.
Exactly. It shows how shoelaces can be used for aesthetic expression going beyond their basic function.
It's incredible to think that something as seemingly mundane as shoelaces can have such a rich history, complex science, and even artistic potential. I feel like I'm seeing shoelaces in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of taking a deep dive into the everyday. There's always more to discover, more to learn, and more to appreciate.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to take a short break. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to explore in the world of shoelaces. We'll be right back with more fascinating stories and insights in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast,
where we're continuing our deep dive into the unexpectedly fascinating world of shoelaces.
Before we jump back into our exploration of lacing methods and the surprisingly vast world of shoelaces, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our amazing listeners.
Yes, we love hearing from you and learning about your own shoelace experiences.
If you have any fascinating shoelace fact stories or even just personal anecdotes you'd like to share, please feel free to leave us a comment or send us a message.
We might even feature your story in a future episode. We're all about building a community of curious minds here on Tell Me More. Now back to our regularly scheduled deep dive before the break. We were discussing how different lacing methods can impact both the functionality and the aesthetics of a shoe. But what about those times when you want to go beyond basic functionality? What about the world of shoelace accessories?
Ah, yes, shoelace accessories. It's a world of intriguing gadgets and gizmos designed to enhance, personalize, and even elevate those humble strings that keep our shoes on our feet.
So we're talking about more than just those plastic tips on the ends of the laces. I've always wondered what those are called, by the way.
Those are called aglets, and they serve a very important purpose. They prevent the lace from unraveling and make it easier to thread through the eyelets.
Aglets. I'll admit I never knew they had a name, but I'm guessing they're accessories that go beyond the practical function of aglets.
Absolutely. For starters, there are hooks, which are especially useful for activities that require tight lacing, like ice skating. Then there are shoelace covers, which provide protection from wear and tear, particularly in sports like wrestling, where laces can take a beating.
So it's like armor for your shoelaces.
You could say that. And then, of course, there are shoelace charms, purely decorative elements that allow you to personalize your footwear and add a touch of whimsy or personality.
Charms for your shoelaces. That sounds adorable.
Mm.
I can see people getting really creative with those.
Oh, they do. And don't forget colored shoelaces themselves. They can be a fun way to add a pop of color or coordinate with an outfit. Some manufacturers use expensive dyes for vibrant hues, while others embrace a DIY approach using permanent markers to create unique patterns and designs.
I bet some schools aren't too thrilled about the colored shoelace trend.
You're right, some dress codes, particularly in high schools, specifically ban colored laces and charms, viewing them as distractions or potential violations of uniformity.
I guess rules are rules. But it's interesting how something as simple as a shoelace can become a form of self-expression, even a source of controversy.
It speaks to the power of even the smallest details to convey identity and challenge norms. But beyond the decorative aspect, there are also accessories with practical functions that go beyond the basic aglet.
Like what?
Well, lace locks, for instance, are a brilliant invention. They secure your laces together, eliminating the need for tying altogether.
So you just slip them on, and you're good to go, and no more fumbling with knots.
Yes, exactly. They're particularly popular with athletes and anyone who wants a quick and easy way to secure their footwear. And then there's shoelace tags, sometimes called doubre.
Dubres. Those sound familiar. Aren't those little metal pieces you sometimes see on sneakers?
Precisely. They have holes or slots for the shoelace to pass through and are usually worn on the part of the lace closest to the toe so the design is visible.
So they're like tiny billboards for your shoes.
In a way, yes, they can display logo symbols or even just decorative patterns. They add a touch of flair and can be used to represent brands, sports teams, or even personal interests.
It's amazing how much thought and creativity has gone into something as seemingly simple as a shoelace. It makes you wonder what other everyday objects have hidden depths and stories waiting to be uncovered.
That's the beauty of curiosity, isn't it? There's always something new to learn, even about the things we take for granted.
Speaking of taking things for granted, we haven't even touched on the cultural significance of shoelaces. I know we talked about the Knights Templar banning them, but are there other examples of how shoelaces have played a role in history or culture?
Oh, absolutely. Shoelaces, while seemingly mundane, have woven themselves into the fabric of human history and culture in surprising ways. For example, in many cultures, the act of tying a knot has symbolic meaning, often associated with binding, securing, or even making a promise.
That's fascinating.
hmm
So the simple act of tying your shoelaces could be seen as a symbolic gesture.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even everyday actions can carry deeper meaning and connect us to cultural traditions. And speaking of connections, remember that myth we discussed about Gurkha soldiers using shoelace patterns to identify enemies in the dark?
Yes, that was a captivating story, even if it turned out to be just a myth.
It was, and while there's no evidence to support the claim, it highlights how shoelaces, even in a wartime context, can become imbued with meaning and symbolism. It speaks to the human tendency to find patterns and create narratives, even in the most unlikely of places.
It's a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can hold extraordinary stories and connections. Speaking of connections, I'm curious about how shoelaces have adapted to the needs of different groups of people. We briefly touched on magnetic closures,
Yeah.
but are there other innovations that address specific challenges or needs?
The world of adaptive clothing has embraced the shoelace as a focal point for innovation. For individuals who struggle with dexterity issues, traditional shoelaces can present a significant challenge.
I can imagine tying those tiny knots can be tricky, even for those of us with good dexterity.
Exactly. So designers have come up with creative solutions such as elastic laces that provide a secure fit without the need for tying, or even zippered closures that completely eliminate the need for laces altogether.
It's amazing how something as simple as a shoelace can inspire so much creativity and ingenuity.
It's a testament to the power of human innovation to address real-world needs and make everyday tasks more accessible for everyone.
I'm starting to see shoelaces in a whole new light. They're not just functional necessities, they're a reflection of history, culture, innovation, and even personal style.
And we're not done yet. There's still more to explore in the world of shoelaces, more hidden depths to uncover, and more stories to tell.
Well, before we dive into those hidden depths, I want to remind our listeners that they don't have to wait for the next episode to continue their shoelace journey.
That's right. We encourage everyone to take a closer look at their own shoelaces, consider their material construction and tying method. You might be surprised at what you discover.
And be sure to share your findings with us. We'd love to hear about your own shoelace adventures. But for now, let's take a short break and come back refreshed and ready to unravel the final mysteries of the humble shoelace. Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast.
Where we're tying up the loose ends of our deep dive into the unexpectedly captivating world of shoelaces.
I have to say, I never thought I'd find shoelaces this interesting.
That's the beauty of curiosity. It can lead us to discover hidden depths in even the most mundane objects.
We've already covered so much ground: history, materials, knot tying techniques, lacing styles, accessories, and even the cultural significance of shoelaces.
And we've only just scratched the surface in this final part of our shoelace saga. I want to explore the intersection of function and aesthetics.
That's a great point. We've talked about how different lacing methods can impact both the practical aspects of wearing a shoe and the overall look. But how do people decide which method to use?
Well, for some, practicality reigns supreme. They want a lacing style that's easy to adjust, stays tied securely, and provides good support for their feet.
That makes sense. I'm definitely a function over form kind of person when it comes to shoelaces.
But for others, the visual element plays a significant role. Remember how we talked about straight bar lacing being the preferred method for formal shoes?
Yes, it creates that sleek, polished look that complements dressier footwear.
Exactly. It's not just about tradition, it's about aesthetics. Straight bar lacing creates a visual harmony that aligns with the overall design of the shoe.
And crisscross lacing is more casual and sporty.
Absolutely. The crisscross pattern adds a touch of visual dynamism and energy, which is why it's so popular for sneakers and boots.
And then there are those decorative lacing methods we discussed, like checkerboard lacing.
Those methods might not be the most practical, but they demonstrate how people use shoelaces as a form of self-expression, a way to add a unique touch to their footwear.
It's like a subtle form of art, using laces as your medium.
Precisely. Shoelaces offer a surprisingly versatile canvas for creativity. You can choose different colors, patterns, materials, and even add charms or tags to personalize your look.
I never thought of it that way, but you're right. You're like a tiny billboard for your personality displayed on your shoes.
And speaking of billboards, remember those tales we discussed about soldiers potentially identifying enemies by their lacing patterns?
Yes, the story about Gurkha soldiers using lacing patterns to distinguish friend from foe in the dark.
It's a fascinating idea, even if it's just a myth. It highlights how something as seemingly insignificant as a shoelace can become imbued with meaning and symbolism, especially in a context like warfare.
It shows how even the smallest details can take on unexpected significance in different situations.
Absolutely, and it speaks to the human tendency to find patterns and create narratives even in the most unlikely of places.
We've talked about function, aesthetics, and symbolism, but I'm also curious about the role of innovation in the world of shoelaces. What are some of the ways shoelaces have evolved to meet the needs of different people?
Well, one area where we see a lot of innovation is in adaptive clothing, specifically footwear designed for individuals who struggle with dexterity issues. Traditional shoelaces can be a real challenge for people with limited hand mobility or coordination.
I can imagine tying those tiny knots can be tricky, even for those of us without any dexterity issues.
Exactly. So designers have developed a range of innovative solutions to make shoelaces more accessible. One example is elastic laces, which offer a secure fit without the need for tying. They stretch to allow the foot to slip into the shoe and then contract to hold it snugly.
That sounds like a great solution. Are there other alternatives to traditional laces?
There are. Another option is to use a zipper closure instead of laces. This eliminates the need for tying altogether and makes it much easier to put on and take off shoes.
It's amazing how something as simple as a shoelace can inspire so much creativity and problem solving.
It's a testament to the power of human ingenuity to address real-world challenges and make everyday life a little bit easier.
As we wrap up our deep dive into the world of shoelaces, I'm struck by how much there is to discover in the seemingly mundane.
It's a reminder that curiosity is a powerful tool. By taking a closer look at the things we often overlook, we can uncover a wealth of fascinating stories, unexpected connections, and even inspire new ways of thinking.
So the next time you tie your shoes, take a moment to appreciate the intricate history, clever engineering, and even the personal style woven into those humble shoelaces.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And that brings us to the end of our shoelace adventure. We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
Remember, there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more stories waiting to be told.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those laces tied.